Past teachers of present celebrities, famous people, what were they like? Not a teacher but a teacher at my school told us about how he taught T.J. Miller. He said that whenever he sees a kid now that he thinks is funny, he compares them to T.J. and realizes that they aren't as funny as T.J. was. He said he was a very well liked kid and that he was obviously a class clown of sorts. If you watch High Music Video Denver, you can see my high school at the end when he starts doing our cheer with all the kids. He comes back to visit every once in a while. Great guy. My best friend's mom knew Kurt Cobain before he was famous. He would give her demo tapes to listen to. And she'd give them back to him because, she said, they were awful. She also gave Kurt money to take the city bus because he was a broke, starving artist with literally no money for the bus. My grandma taught Bill Murray in elementary school way back in the 60s in suburban Chicago. She said he had always been a jokester. While I can't remember any specific stories off the top of my head at the moment, I do have this one. A couple of years ago they had the 50th reunion of that class from the small Catholic grammar school and Murray was filming a movie overseas at the time. Astonishingly, he actually got the invitation that was sent to him and he flew back to attend the reunion, and upon seeing my grandma he transformed into a completely different person. He came up to her and said as politely as he possibly could, "Hello MRS. And then proceeded to have a conversation with her. One of the biggest stars in the world was still intimidated by his grade school teacher. 50 years later. My old English teacher taught Colleen Ballinger, Aka Miranda Sings, and reported she was very quiet. Full of teen angst. Well, at least she's consistent. I hate when people do this. But still. I'm not a teacher. But my high school environmental sciences teacher had a wife who taught high school chemistry to Kane West. She said he was a very nice, smart, and respectful young man. Which means both of them believe his behavior now is an act to get more people to talk about him. My grandmother was Prince's high school guidance counselor. Said he was a quiet and sweet kid, but that his mother was pretty weird. My AP Econ teacher said he was in the same fraternity as Will Ferrell, and apparently whenever they had a party he would disappear for a few minutes and then start streaking. He also said that once a professor gave him a bad grade on a test that would have caused him to retake the class, so he started streaking until the professor changed the grade. At 8 hours old, I'm probably late to this thread and will get buried. But the vice principal of my middle school taught John Bon Jovi in high school. According to him, and this is a direct quote, "It's a good thing that boy could sing because he was dumber than a box of rocks." My dad was in the year below Stephen Fry in college. He says he was the funniest man he'd ever met. Also really insightful and deep. Apparently. Not very interesting, but my 10th grade history teacher taught Julia Roberts and her brother Eric. I can't remember what he said about Julia, but apparently Eric is pigeon-toed and that's probably the reason why he's mainly seen from the waist up in his movies. You all should check out the graphic novel. Someone I used to work with went to church with Dharma. Said he was a nice, quiet guy. Which I suppose is pretty par for the course when it comes to serial killers. I went to school with a girl that Drake samples in one dance. Was pretty weird that Drake heard a barely known song by a girl living in our shitty little English town and took it and made it into a #1. Never spoken to her, but her life has taken a new random turning, which is good to see. My softball coach in high school had taught Marilyn Manson's psychology class at coach's previous position, a different school. He said he was soft-spoken, very smart, and kind of weird. One of my teachers went to school with Damon Albarn, lead singer of Blur and Gorillaz, for anyone who doesn't know, when they were kids. Apparently he picked on her a lot because her mother was a teacher at the school. And once he scribbled over her work, proudly exclaiming, "Hand that in." I was in Stratford, Ontario and ran into someone who used to be Justin Bieber's nanny. From what I gathered, he was an entitled little shitty and always tried to impress girls by playing guitar and stuff. A friend of mine went to high, or probably middle, school with him and said he tried to throw a party once but everyone just showed up and trashed everything because no one liked him cause of his entitlement issues. A friend of mine taught Colin Kaepernick in Turlock CA and said he was a pretty nice guy. Was known more for baseball. I've been teaching for 15 and fingers crossed I'll finally get someone in the news for being positive as opposed to in trouble with the law. My mom taught Michael Vick in 7th or 8th grade in the inner city. She describes him as being very quiet, somewhat shy, and focused on staying out of the trouble his peers were getting into. She taught more of his siblings and became friends with his mom and has always remained close with Michael and his family. She keeps in touch with a lot of her students. She's one of those teachers that actually cares. She was also on the board of directors for his non-profit before he got in trouble. Despite what he's most known for these days, he has always been a person who remained humble and gave back to his community. I went to school with a few too many girls who were in adult films. I graduated over a decade ago, so not sure if that is a common occurrence now or what. Know a friend who went to school with Lewis Hamilton, British Formula 1 racing driver. Supposedly an alright guy but hung around with a lot of dicks. His status of already being an up and coming racing driver, usually most people are picked out to be racers in their teens. He would get away with some much tea. I assume it's because the school wants to leave a positive mark on students who are going to world famous so it helps them in the future. I went to the same school as someone who became an international cricket player. He still plays, but is retired internationally. He was before my time, but was well known at the school still. The teachers all seemed to love him, especially the paid teachers, and would always tell stories about him. There was a massive framed picture of him in one of the corridors. He became the poster boy of the school. I don't know if it's because he's one of the few famous people to come from my town, but he's very popular all round and I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about him. I taught Mark Ruffalo some manners after he slept with my mother. One of my high school teachers had Kristen Bell in her class for a few years. She said that Kristen was a very bright student, always well liked, and she had a beautiful singing voice and was the lead in the school plays. One particular memory she had of Kristen was when she was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Surprisingly, it wasn't the main cast, but rather the Munchkins who stole the show, because they were the varsity football team walking on their knees through the auditorium. Kristen was supposed to sing at her wedding but had to cancel because she had just been hired for a job, which turned out to be Veronica Mars. My hairstylist was Mariah Carey's cosmetology teacher when she attended Bose's vocational school in Green Lawn, Huntington, New York. Said Mariah was a bit of a diva and was not terribly interested in learning the trade of hair and makeup. Wanted to sing instead. I guess that worked out. My 4th grade math teacher also taught LeBron James. She said he was obsessed with basketball. When asked what he was going to be when he grew up, he said he was going to be in the NBA. When she told him he needed a backup plan, he just looked into her soul and said, "No, I'm going to be in the NBA." Well, the voice of Boots the monkey from Dora the Explorer goes to high school with some of my friends. I'm not a teacher, I know. Sorry, but I went to school with one of M. Night Shyamalan's daughters. She was nice. The popular but down-to-earth type. She wasn't arrogant or anything of that sort. And you wouldn't know she was the daughter of a celebrity when you talk to her. I've met M. Night Shyamalan before, and he was really polite, but Reddit seems to hold a disliking towards him. Wait for twist in story, because he ruined the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. Not a teacher but my friend's older brother, let's call him A, was in high school with John Mayer. I guess he used to go to parties and bring his guitar and try to hit on chicks. Tried to pick up A's girlfriend and A punched him out. I deeply want to believe it's all true. Did A go on to torment a group of high school girls? A close relative was the school nurse at Pharrell Williams High School. She said he would visit the nurse's office quite often, pretending to be sick so he could get out of class. She said he was very nice and creative, and wishes she could meet him in person again. My mom taught Kanye West's music theory class in high school. She said he insisted he would one day be a famous rapper, and that he was a decent student but sometimes a bit stubborn. Overall not that noticeable. Although he did like freestyling. He and some other students threw a little baby shower for my mom while she was pregnant with my sister, which is nice. My econ teacher taught Michael Phelps. He said that no one knew who Michael was before the Olympics. As soon as he came back though, whenever he was in school, he was really cocky and obnoxious. But since he rarely was in school, he didn't really have much experience with him after his freshman year. In his defense, he won a shit-ton of gold medals. And apparently all the Olympic athletes FCK the bejesus out of each another in Olympic Village. So let me ask you, if you were in school, went to the Olympics, and plowed some smocking-ass Eastern European track stars, wouldn't you be a little bit cocky and obnoxious? Not a teacher, but a former supervisor of mine went to college with Fred Rogers. She said he was exactly the same guy as he was on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Every time I read something about him, it reaffirms that he was exactly what he purported to be. She wasn't a past teacher of a celeb, but my AP bio teacher in high school went to the same school as Dennis Leary and he asked her to their senior prom and she turned him down. He brought it up in an interview after he got famous and said that she was right for turning him down because he was a total dork in high school. My friend's mom knew Bruce Springsteen pre-fame. He even asked her out, but she turned him down because he was a total nerd and his shitty music was never going to take him anywhere. Your story is nicer. My mom went to school with Trent Reznor. Said he was quiet but when you actually got to know him he was a talking machine. Trent Reznor? You mean Trent Reznor?